Who's that repaint? It's Jesse. That's right, guys. It's part one of our double trouble duo, Team Rocket. From the original Pokemon series, Jesse is fiery and stubborn, always scheming and never without her partner in crime, James. I was gonna have to get creative with how I was gonna pull off Jesse's dynamic clothes, hair, and attitude. So, without further ado, let's blast off again! I chose this old Elizabeth from the 2015 Ghoul Fair release as the base for my Jessie doll. She was in fine condition. I just had to soak her head in warm water until it was soft enough to pop off. I sanded over her entire body to remove that slick factory coating, and so I could apply pastels later. As Jessie's boots aren't totally high heels, I had to cut her feet to alter their arch. I mixed up some epoxy sculpt to build them back up. I didn't sculpt the entire boot, as I knew I'd want to be able to bend her knees later. I also created the general shape and bulk that I needed for her shoes and came back to sand the details later. I find it much easier to work backwards in this way, especially when dealing with delicate symmetry such as with feet and shoes. I also love not having to race the curing clock. At this same time, I was also making James and had a bit of a brain fart about their uniforms. I mixed up some extra epoxy sculpt and applied it over her belly button to create a tight undershirt. Don't worry, I do realize later, but for now we press on. Off screen, I applied a few coats of Tester's Dull Coat and left it to dry. Then I could use chalk pastels to shade her skin tone and gloves. This took many sit-downs and layers to build up the opacity, and ultimately, I feel I was a little heavy-handed. Skin tones are a tricky business, and it seemed I was a bit rusty. Funnily enough, it reminded me of my super tan Nurse Joy and her tiny feet, but these are the lessons we carry with us. And so here I realized I needed that belly button back. I carved it back in with my craft knife and sponged over it with a color-matched acrylic before blending it in with pastels. Then I could paint her actual undershirt. Then it was time to finish the rest of Jessie's sweet boots. I measured her up and cut the pieces to size before strategically gluing them to her ankle, and then up the back seam so as to leave the top open and free to move. They are not flawless, of course, but I was very pleased with myself. It was time to step away from the paints and glues and get into a little sewing. I started by unpicking some old Monster High outfits that were close enough to what I was going for, and I ironed them flat. Then I could pin them to paper, trace them, and cut them out as paper templates. Using these templates, I could make the alterations I needed, such as turning it into a crop and incorporating a high neck. I used a stretchy white jersey fabric to cut out my new patterns and could pin and sew them all together by hand. After a good ironing, Draculara volunteered to try on Jesse's shirt. I played around with it, making sure the fit was right. I pinned my planned turtleneck collar into place and secured it with a high-quality fabric glue. Once that was dry, I could lay it all flat and mark out that iconic Team Rocket R. Using fabric paint, I carefully painted the R in a bold red. Jesse was finally ready to get dressed, and boy was it satisfying. I was so happy with how her body turned out, and now it was face time. Back in the beginning, I had dunked her in warm water to remove her head, but also to soften the glue inside her head so I could fully remove her hair. I started by trimming it as short as I could, and then scraping out the inside with pliers and tweezers. There's no magic trick for this, other than a bit of elbow grease and patience. I, for one, find it very satisfying. To remove her factory paint, I used pure acetone. Since Elizabeth is a vampire, she sports these pointy little elfy ears, so they would have to go. I used a craft blade to cut the tops, and epoxy sculpt to reshape them. Worth noting that using epoxy sculpt on soft plastic like Monster High doll heads is a risky move. Even small alterations like this can suddenly make your doll fragile. The flexible plastic always has the ability of breaking away from the stiff clay, so be sure to handle with care. I color matched a base coat over the epoxy before applying Tester's dull coat. Now we were ready for her face-up. I started by matching her face to her body, which effectively meant tanning the hell out of her. This takes many more layers than it seems on video, but it is made easier by using highly pigmented products. I created shadows and shading around her face and mapped out the general shape of her eyes using watercolor pencils. It had been around 4 years since my last face-up, so I was feeling a little nervous, to be honest. I persevered, following my instincts and staring intensely into Jesse's many eyes on my inspiration board. I had found these little finger cups normally used in the lash business to hold small amounts of water and paints. To intensify my colors, I experimented by shaving my pastels and mixing them with a small amount of water. I liked how this turned out and repeated this trick for Jesse's eyebrows. It felt like magic watching them evaporate, leaving behind the color. Despite my initial nerves, it all felt like riding a bike. With a good glossing of her eyes and lips, it was time to move on to Jesse's hair. I tackled the challenge with some fluffy air-dry clay. I had never used this stuff before. It turned out to be some of the funnest stuff I've played around with. I molded it over her head, creating majority of the shape and bulk. It was so light and easy to work with, although it starts to dry quick. Since I didn't know how it would paint or adhere, I played it safe by binding the hair to Jesse's head with Mod Podge, as well as applying a good layer over the whole piece. To cover the headpiece, I'd need some hair in the form of yarn wefts. Here you can see the different stages, going from yarn to untwined to combed and then flat ironed. This is my go-to process of preparing my hair for many of my dolls. I use a clear, flexible glue to create easy-to-use wefts that I can custom cut for small or awkward areas. Layering your wefts is an important yet confusing part of the process that takes time to get used to. Laying them in a way that would naturally feel upside down or reversed actually allows you to pull the hair back once it's dry for natural looking roots. I styled and combed using small tools and coaxed the hair into place with a small amount of hairspray. To complete her look, I nipped the business ends of some green sewing pins and glued them in place. And just like that, Jessie was all done.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel to show your support. See you next time!